Hi there, it's Tracy Kiernan from stepbysteppainting.net, and this acrylic painting tutorial is going to demonstrate how to paint a snowman with ornaments. I did this on an 11 by 14 inch canvas with acrylics. I'm going to go ahead and show you what colors I used for this tutorial. So a lot of colors for this one. Of course, some of these can be subbed out if you're changing the colors of the ornaments or the scarf or simplifying it. You can definitely limit the color palette if you want. But all of these colors are listed on the bottom of the video, and in the tutorial directions, all these colors are listed. These are the Liquitex Basics acrylic paints, and of course use whatever colors you have available and use whatever brand of paint that you like to use. For the brushes, I used a 1-inch flat brush, which can also be subbed out for just the 3/4 wash brush, but I've been using the 1-inch lately to help me with the background because it fills the background faster than the 3/4 flat brush, but you can use both, one or the other. I used a 12 bright brush, that's that little brush that's flat, it's about a 1/2 inch wide, and then number 4 round brush. And then of course I'm working on an 11 by 14 inch canvas. This is one of those stretched panel canvases that are wrapped on a piece of cardboard, but you can use that or you can use the stretched frame canvas. Both of those work. And you can do this on a different size too if you want to work on a bigger size or a smaller size. So I'm going to start by painting the entire background, a blended wash sort of background with gray. So we have Mars Black and Titanium White on our palette, and when we make this gray, you want to have a much higher proportion of white to black. So I mixed it on my palette with the white and just grabbed a teeny tiny bit of black on that corner and kind of mixed a gray on my palette. But for the most part, I'm mixing this on the canvas. So we just want to kind of fill our canvas up with this gray color. And I'm choosing to make it go in different angles and have it sort of blend on the canvas. You want your gray to be a light to medium gray. You can vary it, so you can have some splotches of kind of a darker gray, some splotches of a lighter gray. Keep in mind that our snowman is going to be white snow, so it needs to have enough contrast so that the snowman will stand out. So you want to make it a medium to light gray, but not too light, also not too dark. So I'm just grabbing mostly white, and then here and there I'll grab black on my corner of the brush and let that kind of blend in. I'm doing long angles. It's a thin layer of paint, so we're not slapping on the paint. Thin layer just means that it's a thin layer of paint. You can use a little bit of water to kind of help spread the paint, but we're not doing multiple coats on this background. It's just enough to cover that stark white background that's not fun to paint on. So this nice pretty gray blended abstract background is what we want to work on. And just filling it up, your angles are just going all different directions and everything is just gently blending together. You will find that you need more white than black for this. And I'm only loading the paint on the tip of the brush, so I'm not grabbing whole bunch of paint on all the bristles as I load. I'm just adding that right there on the tip, and that's enough to do the job to get this paint to be thin, blended, and filled up. So I'm going to go quiet here for a few seconds while I finish this step, and then I'll let you know what to do next. You will need to wait for this to dry before the next step, which is the drawing portion of this painting. And it shouldn't take that long to dry. You can also use a hair dryer and blow dry it really quick, or take like a 10-minute break and come back. And we're going to do the drawing portion of this. So I'm using a regular pencil to draw this. Super simple drawing. We're going to do this shape by shape. You are also welcome to use a piece of chalk to draw this snowman. So we need to fill our snowman in on the left half of the canvas, because the right half is going to be the arm and the ornaments. So as we're drawing this, we only see the top part of the snowman, so we only see two parts of the circles, and he takes up the left half of our painting. I'm going to start with a large kind of semicircle that is hanging off the bottom of the canvas. So I'm drawing this sketch-like, which means I will draw lines, curves, but then go back over them darker as I get more confident with how I want this to look. So there's my bottom part. I made it a little bit more circular. Then I'll start sketching the head. So our head circle needs to overlap that piece slightly, but also be smaller than that middle piece or that bottom piece that we drew. So we're only drawing like half a semicircle. So the top 2/3 or the bottom 2/3 is what we see, and then the top third is covered by that hat. So I did a diagonal line that goes above that circle, so that's the bottom of his hat, and then two diagonal lines and then another line. So right here is where our hat belt will be. So those two lines are kind of going diagonal outwards. And then the top of the hat goes all the way off the canvas. So that's our top hat piece. And then when we paint this in, we can always adjust our drawing. Sometimes painting will make us change the shapes depending on how the paint gets filled in. So right here I'm doing the scarf. The scarf is going to overlap the bottom part of his head a little bit, and also overlap top part of the middle snowman circle. So I didn't do the pieces of scarf that are kind of hanging down, but I did kind of a curvy shape that goes to a point in the middle, and did the same thing on the left. If you want to make this more of a simple scarf, you can. Kind of adjusting the shape and erasing lines that I don't need. And then our arm goes outwards, kind of curved, but mostly going in a horizontal direction so that we can hang ornaments on the arm. And then we have our nose, a little triangular piece right in the center, two little circles for coal eyes. We can do a coal mouth. So my mouth then ended up changing later on in this painting to just kind of a line mouth, but if you want to keep the coal circles as the mouth, you can. I'm just going to make this a little bit darker so you can see. We've got our bottom piece, our top piece, bottom part of the hat. This hat, I'm going to change the angle up here so it's a little bit more, going a little bit more vertical than I wanted it to be. It was going too diagonally for me. And then that is it for the snowman drawing portion. And I'm going to go ahead and start painting the snowman in. So we want to start with titanium white, but we will be doing some shadowing on the snowman using blue and black to create shadows. But first I'm going to use a 3/4 inch flat wash brush to paint the snowman in. And I'm going to start on the bottom and start filling this in. So we want to fill this in and do kind of curved contouring strokes. I'm going to use the tip of the brush to edge the side of the snowman, but then I can use the full width of the brush to fill in the rest. Basically, right now we're not doing any shading, we're just filling this part in with a solid coat of white. But you can see the direction of my strokes changed. So it's going curved on the right and then opposite way on the left. And then the center kind of going in a circular direction and a little bit more expressive kind of in the middle. And then I'm going to load Cobalt Blue onto my palette, and I'm going to use that color to create a shadow color. So I'm going to mix a teeny bit of Cobalt Blue on the corner of my brush and then grab a teeny bit of black. We probably want like 2 little dots of cobalt, 1 little dot of the black, and a whole bunch of white. And you want to mix this light blue-gray color. So the reason why we're utilizing that blue is because if we just did gray, like the same color as the background, the snowman will just kind of disappear in the background because he'll end up being the same color. So using that blue is going to create a different kind of gray so that the shadow of the snowman stands out. And so we're just going to take that blue-gray color, and it should be fairly light. It shouldn't be too dark. So as you're adding this to the top part of that circle, it should not be drastically dark, enough to where if I grabbed white, I'd be able to blend it in easier. So a little bit of the blue-gray at the top, just under the scarf, a little bit of blue-gray going at it curved on the left and the right of the snowman. And the center part of the snowman is bright white. So I added that, and then I went back with the white, and I used that white to kind of just blend in the middle and blend the blue-gray color kind of in the middle. So it just kind of fades back to that lighter color. So the darkest part is essentially just under the scarf and on the sides, and it's brighter right in the middle. So that's going to create that 3D effect of the snow. So I'm just taking that little bit of white, going back over the left part of that snowball and kind of blended that in. And then we basically just want to repeat what we did to the top circle. We will have to paint over our drawing a little bit, but that's okay. So we're going to go ahead, rinse the brush off so that we can start with our fresh white layer of snow first. So rinse, dry, and we want to use fresh titanium white. We want to go ahead and paint that top circle. So everything below that hat, we don't need to paint over the hat, but if your strokes go over in the hat area, that's fine because we'll be painting that black part over our circle. So we did the curve, and then the middle part, we're doing kind of more expressive strokes, and this is, the sides are going in kind of a curved direction. Using the tip of the brush to help kind of outline that shape. So this circle is overlapping that circle below it. Even though our scarf is going to be partially covering it, we can still paint it that way as if that scarf isn't there yet. So just painting that circle, your strokes are going in a circular direction. In the middle, you're just kind of flip-flopping your brush, painting in sort of X-style strokes. But on the side, you're painting in a curved direction. We definitely had to paint over a lot of that hat, but that's okay. Dragged some of this white down over here on the left. Okay, so then we're going to do the shading part. So same thing, we're going to use a little bit of the black, a little bit of the blue to create our blue-gray color. And it doesn't have to be the exact same shade of blue-gray that you used on the bottom, but pretty close to it. So shadow part would be right under the hat. So I'm going to go ahead and add that shadow part under the hat. And I'm going to add the shadow part on the left side of the circle. And this blue-gray color is blending with that white below it since that white has not been dried yet. And then I can go in and grab my white and use that white to help blend that color back out again. So I'm adding that white in the middle. So the middle, I'm doing kind of like X-style expressive strokes, and on the outer parts of the inner part of the circle, I'm doing curved direction. So going curved over here, and then as you get in the middle, you're doing kind of X cross-hatching strokes, and that helps get your spheres to blend and look 3D-ish. And for some reason, I wanted a pop of white over here on the left, so just a pop of lighter color. And maybe a pop of white over here. So I have shadow around where the scarf is going to be, shadow on the left part of the top part of the circle, shadow where the hat is going to be. So we can go ahead and rinse, dry, and use our Mars black. We're going to be painting the hat next. So load the black in just the tip of the brush, and go ahead and use the tip of the brush to help you draw this hat. So we have kind of the top third of the circle, maybe a little bit less than a third of the circle is covered by that hat. We have kind of a banana shape that's covering that top part of the circle. And we want to go ahead and, so I drew that banana shape using the tip of the brush, and I'm going to go ahead and paint that in solid black. Don't worry about the red little band that's going to go on the hat and the holly and the berries. That's going to happen much later in this painting, but for now we're getting the shape of the hat in and our black layer. So this piece is solid black. More paint on the tip of the brush, and I can start outlining I'm going to bring this piece up a little bit further. The banana shape, that curved part, kind of stretched it up a little bit further. But then I can use the tip of the brush to draw the sides, and I decided that we can see the top part of the hat in the upper left corner. So if your drawing ended up that way too, where you can see the top part of the hat, you can draw that part. Or if it's high enough where it goes off the canvas, you might not see that top part of the top hat. So this is going in a curved direction. This is going to create form in our hat simply because I'm using the full width of the brush and I'm painting in a curvy direction. That's going to make it look like that hat is already kind of 3D. And I wasn't worried about painting the right part solid black because I want to add a little bit of gray into this. So I added black and white to my brush, and on the right part of the hat, I'm taking that color and dragging it into that black that's not dry all the way, almost like I'm dry brushing white over this black. It's creating kind of a shiny effect. So just adding white just on the tip of the brush and just dragging it kind of a curved direction. It's going to kind of skid over your black layer it creates a kind of a highlight and shiny thing. And then I'm going to do a little bit of a vertical line right here on the left. So I just dragged it vertically. And then a little bit at the top, I dragged it going in a curved direction. So I'm not trying to turn the hat into gray. I'm just trying to add this kind of highlight, shiny effect by taking that white and letting it skid over that black or blend with it to create some variations in that color. I'm just going to take the tip of the brush to re-outline the bottom outline of our top hat. And the hat is going to kind of curve around our circle, but to do that, I'm going to use a round brush. So this is a number 4 round brush, and I loaded some more black on my palette. And I'm going to take this hat, curve it. So like right here, I'm drawing that piece that goes behind our snowman circle, and this piece right here, so that it goes behind that snowman circle. And I want that to stand out, so I took my white and outlined just the bottom part of that. So just enough to highlight that, make it stand out. So now we have the basic part of our hat in, and we can move along. We're going to do the scarf next. So I used a 12 bright brush for the scarf. This is a brush that's about a ½ inch wide. And I'm using the color Deep Green Permanent. I'm going to go ahead and load just the tip of the brush into that green color. So you can simplify this scarf and make it kind of the same width all the way across. But I'm going to do a more advanced version of a scarf on this snowman. I'm going to make it so our scarf looks like it's twisting in the middle where that other piece is tied in a kind of a folded knot. So I did like a teardrop shape. It starts out thick, it's curved on the right, and it goes thin to a point to the left. And on the left side, kind of the same thing. It starts out curved and thick, and it gets thin right in the middle. So that part of the scarf where it gets thin, that is where that piece is folded over. So we can do our piece that's folded over. We can do a curved piece that's kind of sticking up above that part. It's folded over. And there is, so I'm using the tip of the brush to draw it out. That's like the little flyaway part of the scarf that's folded over. I'm going to paint in a curved direction using the full width of the brush. Paint it, contouring strokes, going in the direction that the shape is. So it's curved. And then if you want 2 little pieces on the scarf, we can paint another one in. So this one could be hanging down. Just went over this piece again with a second coat. So you can leave it like that, or you can do a second piece that's hanging down. So this one would be under the first piece. So this one kind of going straight down. In almost like an angled direction. So using the tip of the brush and filling it in. So we have our scarf. If you wanted to decorate the scarf, add plaid or designs to it, you can. I decided to leave it just a blank green scarf, but I did add some highlight and shading to this, and I'll show you how I did that. Just kind of filling this in solid. So I'm going to grab a little bit of white on the tip of the brush. So basically I'm mixing green and white together. So with this light green color that I created, kind of like what we did to the hat, where we took that white and we just let it kind of skid across the color without over blending it. It's going to create that highlight shiny effect. So again, just adding that white to the tip of the brush. You can mix it with the green on the palette, or you can leave it just solid white. Just taking it, just kind of letting it skid over your color that you applied. Create some variation in that green. It's letting that color blend right there on the canvas. I can do the same thing with the black. The black is tricky though because it's super dark. It can take over very fast. So just be very careful with this black. I just use the tip of that to kind of make this bottom part dark right here. Dark. And then this piece right here, I made that one a little bit darker. And then if you mess up and you think, oh man, that's too much black, you can quickly wipe that black off your brush. Go back with the green and just go back over it. Makes that black a little less powerful in that, making it too dark. So we're taking the green and just kind of lightening it up with the green. And then I can keep going in if I wanted to. Again, I could add patterns. I recommend you wait until the scarf is completely dry before adding the patterns. But I'm going to do the little fringe. So I'm just taking black on the tip of the brush, still using the 12 bright brush, just the tip. And I'm painting little diagonal vertical pieces. They're hanging down from the scarf on the edges. And each of the edges of the scarf. Again, just using the tip of the brush, painting little lines to create that texture. I'm going to do that on both of the scarf pieces. And then I'm going to do the same thing, but add the white. So the white's going to add more texture, more color variation to this. If you don't want to add the white in there, you don't have to. But you can see the effect that it's creating. Gives it more texture, more depth. Next, I'm going to do the nose. So I'm going to load my palette with Cadmium Orange Hue. And I'll be using that 4 round brush for this. Before doing the nose, unless you feel super confident with this, I recommend you kind of draw it out. I know we drew it out earlier, but then we painted over it. So I'm going to draw it again. The little triangular carrot nose stays inside the circle. It doesn't poke out the side, so it's kind of a smaller nose. And then 2 little eyes. So the eyes are going at an angle along, kind of parallel to the hat and our mouth. So I decided to do a more simplified version of this mouth. So I did like a curve and then circle for a cheek. But it's kind of a side smile, so we only kind of see it on the left side of the snowman. So once you have your drawing in, then you can take your round brush, load it in the orange, and go ahead and paint your carrot nose in. So I'm going to go ahead and start by outlining the shape. Get that outer part filled in. So the edges of this carrot I'm making kind of wobbly on purpose. So it's not like a super sharp straight edge. It is a carrot, so it's kind of wobbly and wavy on the edges. You can kind of do the same. You can just kind of make it, kind of wiggle your hand as you're painting the edges. And so this is just a solid coat. Doesn't matter the direction that your strokes are going in, just solid coat of orange. And if you want to add highlight and shading to this, you can start with our white. Load the white on the brush. So I'm doing this before the orange dries. It also works to do this after the orange dries. This is blending in very quickly with that orange. So I'm going to add more white to my brush. Basically, I'm just doing kind of curved strokes on the top part, top edge of the nose, not the bottom edge. The bottom edge is going to be reserved for shadowy colors, but just the top part, curved. And see how it's just kind of blending with that orange. Just doing little curved strokes, kind of dragging that down so that the top part of that is lighter, but it also creates some texture because I dragged that white down, creating kind of lines. And then if we want to do shadow, we can go ahead, rinse the brush dry, and we want to, so I'm actually going to mix green and orange together. You could do this with black, but I decided to utilize my green to create some shading in this orange color. So it's kind of an opposite complementary color, not perfect complementary, but green can be used to create shadows in our color. So I'm just mixing equal parts green and orange. If it's not dark enough, then add a little bit more green to that. On the bottom part, basically repeating what I did on the top by doing that again on the bottom. So just kind of dragging it, creating almost lines in that, blending it up into the orange so it's a little bit more shadowy on the bottom. Then we can rinse and dry and grab our black, and we can paint the eyes. So still using the number 4 round brush, load that into the black, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint where I drew those circles. I'm going to do mine not perfectly circular, but kind of like a coal shape, so kind of wobbly and organic. So it also helps to add just a teeny bit of water to that black to kind of loosen it up. And then I'll go ahead and do the smile. So I just did a simple kind of side smile. So this one doesn't go across and under that nose. It just stays towards the left side. And if you want to change this to like a coal mouth, you are definitely welcome to. I will be doing like a rosy cheek color, but I'm going to let that black dry before attempting to do that. And then next, I'm just going to take my white and do 2 little dots going in a diagonal direction inside the eye. Gives the snowman so much character by adding those 2 little dots. And then I'm going to load my palette with the red. So I'm going to add the red band that's on his hat next. And I'm using the number 12 bright brush, so that's that 1/2 inch flat brush. I'm just going to take this and use the width of the brush to drag that red paint across. It needs to go in a curved direction. That's really going to give your hat that formed 3D look if you make it go in that curve. So that bottom part of the hat is curved, and so is this. And since it's red and we didn't do a white layer first, it might show up kind of dark and not have good coverage. So you might have to do a couple coats. If you wanted that red to be super bright, you can do a white layer first and then wait for that to dry and then do the red over it. I just did the red over the black, and it is showing up for the most part. We can add a little bit of white to this anyway to allow it to kind of have highlights. So remember how we just kind of took that white and let it kind of skid over the black? I'm going to do the same thing to that red. I just took that white and just kind of let it go over that color. Gives it a little bit of highlight without over blending it. And then since we're working with red now, if the mouth is dry, I'm going to show you how you can kind of do the cheek. I just used my finger for this. So I put my finger, my index finger, in the white and the red, about equal parts, maybe a little bit more white. It's going to turn your red kind of a rosy, light red color. So that's Cadmium Red Medium Hue. Just take a little bit at a time on the finger. Just kind of smear it in that cheek area, the snowman, kind of in the middle, and then just kind of smear it outwards. You can make it bigger if you want, or if you don't like that look, you don't have to do that. Then I can take my brush and kind of go over that mouth again to make that overlap what I just painted. You could also just use your round brush to paint the cheek. So you can just mix your red and white together. It just needs to be really, really thin. And then you can just kind of paint your circle. It shouldn't be too dark. It should be very light in color. I'm just kind of going back and kind of extending that circle outwards a little bit. And using my finger to just kind of smear it because I want it to be super light. Next, I'm going to do the buttons. So I'm going to go back to my 4-round brush and add the black to the brush towards the right, not exactly in the very center of that, but towards the right of the scarf. These are going down, also not circular, kind of organic coal shapes, and they're going in a slightly diagonal direction, slightly diagonal, kind of curved. Next, I'm going to do the arm of the snowman, so that long stick that we drew earlier, and I'm going to load my palette with burnt umber. You can use literally any brown for this. You can even use black if you don't have brown or if you're trying to simplify the color palette. So I'm just going to take this. This is a 4-round brush. I'm going to allow it to be a little bit thicker at first, and I'm just going to take my time and just slowly add this brown in there. It does not need to be one continuous stroke. We can take our time and kind of make it a little bit textured on the side so it's not perfectly straight. It's kind of wobbly. So I'm kind of painting the stick in segments to create that effect. Touched up that mouth really quick. But if you want to vary the color, you can add a little bit of black to it so it kind of gets dark in some areas. In some areas it's brown. You can do that, or you don't have to do that. So just painting it in sections. And then when we get towards the right, that stick gets a little bit thinner. So you want to release the pressure of the brush so that it gets a little bit thinner. And then it starts branching out. In fact, it branches out in multiple areas. If you want the branches to be longer, you can, but I just did smaller little branch pieces. So you can kind of add those wherever you want. And the branch pieces also get thinner on the tips, a little bit thicker at the base and then thinner as you release the pressure of the brush so that the tip of the branches are much thinner. So you can use the tip of the brush and hold it lightly to create that thinner stroke if needed. And then we have his other arm. We can still see over here on the left, but this one may not have any branch pieces, just a line that kind of goes off the canvas. And then I'm just going to go back with black and just kind of go in some of those parts of the branch and kind of blend the black in there, create some variation in that color. A very optional step. If you don't want to do this, you don't need to. I'm going to rinse my round brush next and add some more detail work. So on the coal buttons, I'm going to do little dots of white for snow or frost just on the right side. So I'm just loading the tip of my brush in titanium white. And I'm just going to paint little dots on the right, just on the right side. Some might be overlapping and going outside of that circular shape. And I'm also going to add holly and berry leaves to the hat. So I used the Green Deep Permanent in Titanium White, but I also loaded my palette with Cad Yellow Medium Hue. You can use any yellow, you don't have to use this exact yellow. But I made a yellowish green on my palette, but adding that yellow to the green, adding a little bit of white. It does not have to be the exact proportions, just mix kind of a yellowish green on your palette. Just gives a different green to the picture because we already have that pure deep green permanent in the scarf. And I'm going to do these holly leaves in kind of a lighter color. So I just used the tip of the brush to create the outer shape of it. So the holly leaves are kind of spiky, so you're doing kind of inverted curved shapes to form the leaf. So you do the shape first, and then you fill it in solid with that color. And for the most part, it should give coverage, especially since we added white to that color, to that green. It should show up. If you didn't add white to it, you might have to do a couple coats or go and add white to it so that it covers that dark background of the hat. So I had one leaf kind of overlapping off the hat, one leaf kind of going diagonal down, and you can change the direction of your leaves. You can add more or less. This one's kind of sticking straight up, but also overlapping our hat. And then I left a little bit of space in where those leaves meet because the berries will be added. I'm not going to paint the berries right now because that's going to become messy. So we're going to let the green dry before doing the red berries. And also I grabbed a little bit of white and just on one side of the holly leaves with the white, and it's just kind of blending with the green, just going in there, kind of gives it some highlight, almost like you're outlining only one side. Next, we will be drawing the ornaments that are hanging from the snowman arm, and we're going to use a pencil to do that. So I'm just going to kind of sketch out where I want my ornaments to be. This can obviously be changed when we paint it in, so it's not set in stone. So I did a vertical line. On the far left, you want to make room for 3 ornaments unless you're changing this up and only adding 1 or 5 or 2. So you can add as many or as little ornaments as you want. You can also skip this step if you're simplifying this painting. You don't have to do the ornaments. You can do different shapes. So it's fun to look at ornament clip art on Google Images, and you can pick different styles of ornaments. So I did a circle. So each ornament's attached to a vertical line, and then you can vary the heights of the ornament. So some could be lower in the canvas, some a little bit higher, some middle ground. I did a heart in the middle. So you want to start each ornament with a vertical line, and then you can do your shape. And then the little piece that attaches the shape to the line is like a trapezoid shape. I did not do the trapezoid shape on the heart. That would be a little bit too much in that little area because it points down. So after you drew your ornaments and you like how it looks, then you can go ahead and paint them in. So you can simplify this and not do any shading or highlighting. You can do very basic highlighting. I'm going to do a little bit of an advanced version for my painters that are a little bit more experienced, but like I said, you can definitely simplify this. So I'm painting this circle and I'm using the round brush, solid red, so that's a Cad Red Medium. And if you struggle painting circles, you're not alone because I do too. It ends up looking wobbly, and I have a little baby wipe handy to kind of erase little smudges that I did to go outside the line. But I find when you do circles, it helps to kind of start in the middle and just kind of work your way outwards instead of just painting the large circle shape first and then painting it in. So start in the middle and just kind of work your way outwards, form the shape. If it's a little bit wobbly, that's okay. It's a stylized, illustrative painting. It's not realistic. So for highlights, you can either do this after your red dries or you can do it now. I'm going to do it now. So I'm going to load my brush in the white, And if you want to simplify this, just do the one little curve and call it done. Or if you want to make this advanced, you could take that white, kind of swirl it in with the red. So I did a curved line on the left part of the circle, and I just kind of did like this zigzag swirly thing that kind of blended with the red towards the middle, and that creates some color variation in that red. Kind of gives it that shiny look. And your red might blend in too much with or your white might blend in too much with your red to where it just kind of like disappears. So if that happens, you can dry it and then come back to this step. But I'm just kind of layering on this white so that it kind of looks like that it's giving it that shiny look without blending too much of that white and that red, so not over blending it, and just on the left side. And we can always go back after that dries and add some more to it. I'm going to go ahead and paint the heart, and I did that with Cobalt Blue. Feel free to change the colors of these ornaments, personalize them. You can add kids' names on the ornaments, you can add family names, quotes. There's so many different possibilities you can do with these ornaments. So Cobalt Blue, still using the 4-round brush, I'm just going to paint the blue solid. So painting the heart, solid coat of that Cobalt Blue, and I'll do the same kind of highlighting thing before the blue dries. Then I'll go ahead and rinse my brush for this. Rinse dry, grab the white, and on the left side, do the little curve and just kind of wiggle your brush, swirl it into the rest of the blue. Add a second layer of white, more towards the left. It's a little bit brighter. It creates that kind of depth in it. So you do a first layer of white, kind of blends in with the blue. Second layer that's a little bit brighter, a little bit more on the left. If you're simplifying it, one little curved highlight line on the left part of the heart also works. So for the ornament on the left, I did gold, also an optional color. The thing with gold is it doesn't always show up super opaque at first, so you might need to add a couple layers of the gold to get it to really show up. This one isn't doing too bad. I think it's because it's going on a light colored background. But if your sky was darker, it may not give good coverage right away. You might want to paint the ornament white first and then wait for the white to dry and then paint the gold over it. That'll give it some really good coverage. But you can see it is a little bit translucent, but you can do multiple coats to get that to be covered solid. So I'm kind of doing the same exact thing with this gold that I did with the red one. I'll do the highlighting thing after I get this circle all filled in. And then I'm going to add white, fresh white to my palette so that I can highlight this. So you can rinse the brush off or you can just add the white on there. I'm just going to kind of do the curved thing on the left and kind of let it swirl back into the rest of the gold. The white also kind of makes that gold stand out a little bit better. To do the shadowing of the gold, I didn't do shadowing to the other two ornaments, but I decided to do it to this, and I'll do it to the red one later. Take your gold and mix it with the brown. That's going to make your gold darker. And just on the right side of that circle, kind of outline the inner part of it and just let it kind of blend in with the rest of the circle. It's going to create that shadow in that. Also advanced, if you don't want to do that, you don't have to. You can just do a solid gold circle and then a simple highlight, and that is perfectly fine. I'm going to go ahead and do the strings and the little piece that's attached to the top of the ornament and the little bows. And I did that with all black, so still the number 4 round brush. Now, if you're finding that this brush is too thick for these lines, you are welcome to use a much smaller brush. You can even do this with a black paint pen, or even a Sharpie would work. So if these are very, very small details, sometimes it's hard to really hold that brush and do the fine detail in there. But I'm doing a little trapezoid shape on the top of each of the circles. And the bottom of that trapezoid overlaps that top part of the circle just slightly. So, and then painting that in solid black. If your string for your drawing is in a different spot after you painted your ornament, that's okay. You can do your string. And I did a little bow. So 2 little loopy lines and a little kind of string kind of dangling down. For the heart, I didn't do a trapezoid, but I did like a little kind of egg shape in there just so it can attach to something. I didn't want to take away from the fact that it's a heart by overpowering it with a huge trapezoid shape at the top. So I did a little bow on the top of each of the ornaments. And then in the center of that, I'm going to do for the most part, my lines are still in the same spot. I did a little vertical line going up to the arm, and you can even make it look like that little line is kind of looping around. If you wanted the bows to be at the top to make it look like they're tied to the branch, I guess that would make sense as well. You can do bows up there. And if you wanted to decorate your ornaments, you can. I went back and did one little curvy highlight on the right side of each of the trapezoid shapes on the black. So you don't want to do that if your black isn't dry, but I was able to do that. But the heart, I did little polka dots. It's little white dots throughout the heart. If you wanted to add designs on your other ornament, you can. I did a curvy highlight. So after I detailed all those ornaments, after those dried, I did an actual highlight. So a curved line on the left side on both of the circle ornaments. And I'm going to shadow the circle ornament. The red ornament. So I shadowed the gold one, but I didn't do the red one yet. So I basically just added brown to my red, and just on the right side of the red one, I added kind of a little slither of that dark red just on the right, and that gives it that darker color. I did not do that to the blue one. My blue ornament was already kind of shadowed anyway because I didn't add any white highlight, and the blue was already kind of a darker color anyway. So just a very, very thin line on the inner part of that circle. That is an advanced option that you don't have to do if you're simplifying this painting. Next, I'm going to add snowflakes to the background. There's a lot of blank area in the upper left part of our canvas. I thought about doing a bird perched on the branch, like a cardinal bird, and you can do that if you want to, but I decided to just keep it simple and not do a bird, and I did snowflakes. So when I do snowflakes, I'm using titanium white, using the 4 round brush. Again, use a smaller brush if this one is too large for the detail work. I do an X and 2 vertical lines, so like an asterisk star sort of thing. And then I go and add intricate details to that. So it also helps to water the white down a little bit so that it gets kind of flowy. When you water that white down, it's more easier to control to create finer details versus if we're just using plain thick white, it may get kind of gloopy and you may not be able to create those thin lines. But I did like little carrot diagonal lines on the edges of those. And then I did curves just on the X part of that snowflake. If you want to look up snowflake clip art to get kind of different ideas, you can. I did each snowflake different. So over here in the upper left part, and feel free to make these large snowflakes. Feel free to vary the sizes. So I did an X vertical line. So those lines kind of varied. And then I turned that line, the smaller lines, into like a box. So it ended up being kind of a diamond shape in the middle. And then 2 little diagonal lines on the edges. And then diagonal lines on those longer pieces. Maybe there's a little dot on the end of each of those. It's fun to paint snowflakes. It's kind of a zen moment in painting because you really don't have to think too hard about it. You're just painting an X and vertical lines, horizontal line through that X, and just adding intricate details to each of your lines. In this one, we're going to do a little bit simpler, but just little diagonal lines in the middle and on the end pieces. So do as many snowflakes as you want. And do little dots of snow as well. So when you do the little dots, make sure you do them in clustered. They do not have to all be spread out evenly. So they're falling in clusters. Some are thicker, so you can put more pressure on the brush to make them thicker. You can even use your finger to kind of smear some of the dots to make them kind of blurry if you want. Don't forget, if you have space on the left or space towards the bottom, you can add snow there as well. If you wanted to do the toothbrush method where you're flicking little splatter paint of snow, you can. I just didn't do that for this painting. If you have any pencil lines showing, you can erase. If you're erasing, just be really careful that whatever you're erasing is not wet. You don't want to smear any of the paint and mess up your painting. But as long as you didn't paint over pencil lines, it should erase. It might erase actually if there's one coat of paint over that pencil line. And I'm just going to add more snow flurries kind of throughout. Snow would definitely be landing on our stick. So I did very simple, like a glob of snow along his arm and his nose and hat. So just with pure white, I'm not shading that or anything. It's just a solid little glob of white. And we can't forget the berries. So the holly berries, I did white first, 3 little circles. And then after those circles are dry, or when they're almost dry, we can go back over those and paint them red. Another glob of snow on his hat. Maybe on the top part of the hat. So wherever there's kind of a horizontal area for snow to land, you can add the little glob of snow. That detail adds so much character to our snowman painting. And while the circles for the berries are drying, I'm going to go ahead and just add more snow flurries throughout the painting. I don't think there can be too many snow flurries, especially since the background is already a light color. It's not going to make the painting look too busy. You can take your finger and smear some of those snow flurries. And then I added a little bit of white on the right side over here, just a little touch up where that hat kind of overlapped a little bit. And over here, a little bit of bright white on the far right. Over here on the far right as well, a little pop of bright white. And next we can go ahead and paint our berries in if the white is dry or almost dry. So using Cad Red Medium Hue and the round brush. And we're just going to go ahead and paint our circles red. And then on the right side of each of the circles, I'm just going to take my brush and do little white dots just on the right side. A little bit of frost on those berries. And this guy too. I also did a little bit of highlighting on the scarf. So if you wanted to add designs to the scarf, you're welcome to. You would have to make sure your green is dry, but it should be dry by now for sure. Just taking that white and just kind of highlighting some parts of that. Adding that kind of dry brush style and just taking my finger, just kind of smearing it out so it's not overpowering that green. And I'm going to show you if you want to add a little bit of shadow under the snowman nose, you can. This is an advanced step. You can skip this if you don't feel comfortable doing it. But I'm going to make a watered down blue and black. So kind of that blue-gray color we made in the beginning. But it needs to be darker than the shadow that we created. So a few shades darker. So watercolor consistency, blue and black mixed together. Just add that just under the nose. And again, it should be super light and it's watercolor consistency. Then I can take my finger and just kind of smear it to blend it in with the rest of it. And that creates your kind of shadow color under the nose. So just under that curved bottom part of the base of the nose. And you can add a little bit of a darker line just under the base. But that is it. This is the conclusion of how to paint snowman with ornaments. Hope you enjoyed this painting. Thanks for watching and thanks for painting with me.